reconvene to open session, please. We have no action items during closed session, so I welcome you to our special board meeting for LCAP and budget planning. Is there, oh, I need to read my thing, sorry. Okay, individuals may address the board on agenda items, both closed session and regular session agenda during public participation and/or at the time they are under consideration by completing the pink form that's over on the rolling cart and provide them to Anna. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per individual. Speakers may be chosen or will be chosen in random order. Each person may only speak once per agenda topic and is required to address the board from the podium to ensure that everyone can hear. Public comment cannot be acted upon or discussed at the board unless placed on the agenda at a subsequent meeting in accordance with the Brown Act. The board board requests that staff respond orally at the meetings or in writing at future time. The total for 20 minutes per topic is allowed. Remember, please silence your phones, and we are being videoed and broadcast on the Fort Bragg Unified School District YouTube channel. Thank you again to our students that are here so diligently before, during, and after our meeting, so thank you very much for that. Okay, and please remember to keep your mics close as we proceed this evening. So it is a special meeting, so we can have public participation on agenda items only this evening. And seeing no public, Mr. Kale, do you have anything to? I'm fine. Okay, so we'll move right in to our two discussion items this evening. The first being the LCAP development.
So one of the charges that we have in our LCAP is to make sure that we offer public meetings so that we can have these open discussions and we can talk about planning. This next LCAP session is a 3-year term. So it's for 2021, 21-22, and 2022-23. So in that 3-year term, we create our actions and use those actions to guide, to implement our goals and to make our goals happen. One of the reasons why the state moved to a 3-year LCAP was to try and keep all of the planning confined to this one document. I went to the superintendent symposium last week, and the running joke was that when the LCAP was first introduced, it was supposed to be an 8 to 10 page document that was going to be easy for folks to read. And the whole crowd erupted in laughter. The bigger districts have something like a 300 to 400 page LCAP. Our LCAP is 96 pages long. And that's because if you do it the right way, every action and goal from your schools, right, should be included in your LCAP. And so we are doing it the right way. Our schools all have the same goals that our LCAP has, so they're all married to each other. So as we move forward in this next 3 years, one of the things that we need to look at, do our goals continue to apply? Are the 3 goals still pertinent? Do we need to add any goals? Do we need to modify any goals? Do we need to move in a different direction? Can we say, well, we finished that goal, check, let's go on to something else? And so these are the public meetings that are incredibly necessary for us to have that open forum, invite our stakeholders. We have kind of this double-edged sword in our community. When people are angry about something specific in the schools, the board meetings are packed. When people are generally okay or feel that things are just fine and there's no upheaval, our board meetings aren't terribly well attended. And also, our families work hard. Evening board meetings are tough to get to, and if you have small children, this is when the bedtime routine starts, right? We go to dinner, bath, books, the whole regiment. So we've tried the board chats, which I've been impressed with the board's enthusiasm on trying to find other times to meet with the public. We've had one parent, it was fantastic. He came like 2 times in a row. We were super excited. Thank you, you know who you are. We had an employee, so, but it hasn't been the wealth offerings that we had hoped for. Some of the things that I want to bring up to you is I would like to, with your permission, I would like to contact the high school and ask them to get a sprinkling of seniors. And just have just kind of a student forum. Okay, you're on your way out. What would have made school better? What do you wish you would have been able to do? What would have worked more beautifully for you? kind of like an exit interview through human resources, right? But our kids will have answers for it, you know? Yes,
We should include some questions for the parents as well.
I would agree with you. So I would like us to develop some of that together so that we can have that out and just kind of, you know, what would make life better. The hard part with our LCAP and when we're planning it, there is a specific need that must be addressed in the LCAP, and that need is our supplemental and concentration funding. That supplemental and concentration funding gets confused a lot. And there are lots of districts who have not used that appropriately, and they're feeling it now. We have used ours appropriately. Supplemental and concentration is supposed to be beyond the core. It's supposed to be the extra stuff that we don't do. It's supposed to be stuff that we offer outside that 100% focus on our socioeconomically disadvantaged kids, our English language learners, and our foster homeless youth. That is our unduplicated count. That means if I'm an EL kid and I'm socioeconomically disadvantaged and I'm a foster kid, okay, then I'm only counted one time in that count. I am unduplicated. So our unduplicated count right now is almost at 80%, okay, which is a huge jump because this year, rather than everybody bringing in the green form for free and reduced lunch, right, everyone was able to complete that with anonymity. So I think more families were very honest about that. If we're looking at an 80% unduplicated count, that has the potential to bring in more supplemental and concentration dollars. Here's a double-edged sword. Our employee groups are going to say, that's more money, that's a raise. And as much as I would love to say, amen, let's do it, that is not how supplemental and concentration dollars can be spent.
About 17% of our, at least certificated wages are already in there. So there is a portion of that that would go, but not, we can't do wholesale across the board increases out of supplemental concentration.
So that's the tricky part. Tina Krenoff is our DLAC coordinator, which is our District English Learner Advisory Council. And she has a meeting with me next week because she wants to talk, just give me an update on what's going on. But we are going to have a conversation about what we can do at the next DLAC meeting to talk with our English learner families. I spoke with Delia at Redwood. She is one of the bilingual aides, and she's doing some family outreach that we have incorporated in our LCAP. And so I asked her, I said, you know what, Delia, let's have a real discussion with our families to figure out, are we missing something? Because I don't necessarily think it means we hire another bilingual aide. And she said, I agree with you. She said, but we need to figure out what that is, you know? So she and I are going to get together here within a week or after the break, hopefully within a couple of weeks, to be able to have that conversation. So going out and doing the outreach to figure out, okay, what are the components that we are missing? What are the things that we can do better? What are the things that we can dive more deeply into and really look at the data and to analyze, are we addressing the need? It also means looking at the data and identifying the needs, right? So the big metrics for us in this LCAP are going to be the metrics that we find in our dashboard. So that means our math scores, our ELA scores, that's English Language Arts, college and career readiness dashboard, our suspension rate, our chronic absenteeism rate. What am I missing? High school graduation rate.
Graduation.
Okay, so those are going to be the big metrics, and those are the things that we are going to have to measure to determine if what we are doing is working. And within those, there are smaller things that we can look at, site by site, subgroups, and so forth. So in moving forward, one of the discussions I'd like us to have is, because we are having a difficult time bringing in the public, you know, what are the specific groups that we want to identify, and then how we get out there to do it. So like I said, I think the parent survey is a great idea. I'd like to meet, like I said, with seniors, just different groups of seniors, because there are different groups of seniors. And then trying to have some outreach with our DLAC parents, through ELACs as well and through our parents clubs. And then really trying to do as deep as we can, a dive into what we're doing. What we are doing right now, I will tell you that in the form of moving closer and closer to a multi-tiered system of support model, that's MTSS, that we are focusing on the 3 pillars of MTSS, which is the academic. The academic component is we're working with our teachers on special assignment who are our instructional coaches. They're working with the county and Aaron Carter. We have brought in Dale Myers, who's helping us with that as well. We have Kelly Smith, who's come in for our middle school and high school, and that's making an impact as well. The second pillar of MTSS is the social emotional component. We've used our LCAP to focus our supplemental and concentration dollars on making sure we have a full-time counselor at every site. So that's 100% in the works. And then the final component is the behavior component. The theory behind it is if students are emotionally ready to learn, then they can learn. If students are academically challenged with appropriate grade level material at their level, those 2 things coupled will provide a stable behavior environment. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's why there are 3 pillars to this. They all each have a part in it. When you have kiddos who are high flyers on behavior, but they're accessing curriculum that they can do and feel confident and we can still push them through the struggle, most oftentimes the behaviors disappear. If they are emotionally ready to be able to access that curriculum, then a lot of times you don't see those behaviors. So we are addressing all of those things right now, and that's been the main focus of our LCAP. I would encourage us to stay on that road. Dana Gray and the middle school are the recipients of the MTSS pilot grant. So we're on that road for at least another year. We are nowhere close to saying that we have an ideal model. To be honest with you, if we are going to say we have an ideal MTSS model, I would estimate that it's going to be another 5 to 7 years before we feel really good about it. And Mr. Kale's nodding and saying maybe, because I think in his head he's thinking it's 10. Because it's slow and steady. You know, we are fixing an airplane in mid-flight, and I use that analogy so much because we have the kids for 180 days. Beyond that 180 days, we have the teachers for 5. So how do we work with our staff to improve what we're doing when they're in the classrooms flying the plane, right? This is the conundrum that every school in America has right now. How do you fix the plane while it's in mid-flight? And where do you get the money to bring everybody in the summer and say, okay, here's what we're gonna do? So where we are with the LCAP right now is getting out and talking to our families, talking to our constituents, talking to our groups, and really coming up with a focused plan for the next 3 years. The college and career readiness indicator, we've taken a beating on because we haven't reported our data correctly. So it's incumbent upon myself and our counselors and our admin to make sure little things like the course codes are in correctly. Let me say that again because that may not have sounded right. Making sure like course codes are entered correctly, not incorrectly, yeah. So are entered correctly. Making sure that we are tagging our kids who are going to be biliterate diploma recipients. Making sure that we are doing all the little behind the scenes on the data collection correctly. And then making sure that we are giving our kids beyond the business stuff, giving our kids opportunity to really explore college and career. And what does that mean? It's more than just a job fair, but a job fair and a career fair is a great start because it starts those conversations. So as we go into this next 3 years, the college and career readiness, increasing college and career readiness, I truly believe that's a goal that we have not adequately addressed. We talked about the closing the achievement gap and really talking about improving student success so that every student, regardless of what they come to the table with, we're looking at every student making improvement every year. And then the third goal of improving school culture, we are in the middle of this MTSS journey. That is absolutely one huge component of it. We have Dr. Dale Myers coming out for PBIS. He's actually here. He's been here this whole week. He spent 2 days at Dana Gray, 2 days at Redwood, and a day at the middle school. So we want to continue utilizing his services. He's looking at the whole K-8 component and making sure that what Redwood does lends itself to Dana Gray, lends itself to the middle school. So my report to you right now on LCAP is I believe that we need to stay on the same path with our 3 current goals, with renaming the Close the Achievement Gap to increase student success. If you have other ideas, this is your moment, your time, one time of many, to be able to have this discussion with each other, because the only times that the 5 of you can speak is at a board meeting. So that's kind of the long version of where we are with the LCAP. Thoughts?
I would just love to try and get some more community engagement. But I think LCAP's is foreign language to a lot of people. So I wonder if it's possible to get some sort of brief article in the paper. I'm looking at you, Mary.
I could do that.
Kind of explaining what it is, what our goals are, and just the fact that we're in the midst of this planning process. Because once it's set, it's 3 years. Not that we can't change it, but this is it. You want input into how your local education school district is implementing education. This is a great opportunity to do that.
And this really does replace the strategic plan. At the superintendent's conference, I attended a couple of sessions, and I was talking to some colleagues, and I said, you know, folks, I want to make sure that I'm interpreting this correctly. I'm hearing a lot of people talking about their strategic plan, and I said the idea behind this 3-year LCAP was to replace that. And I had some superintendents say, yeah, you're correct, but we're still going through the strategic planning process because we want to talk about big long-term goals. And I said, well, with us in Fort Bragg, my concern with doing something that big and labor-intensive is that our board, we don't have the same board for 10 years. Not that I don't hope that you all return, but that's really just the state of affairs. And so I had made the comment to a couple that, you know, a long-term strategic plan is while the intention of it, I think, is good and the process is good, it's not a document that anybody's going to look at again. Where the LCAP, we have to refer to it quite often. We refer to it with all of our school plans. And then when we do our mid-year reports, when we look at what we're doing, and now, because of the accountability model, we have to be able to cite specifically how these dollars are being used and how they're targeted at the groups that they're targeted for. So I like the idea of getting a brief article in the paper so that we can try and educate folks more on what this is. What are your thoughts about the 3 goals? Do you want to stay on that same vein?
I think it's absolutely correct to do that. It takes time to make those changes, and this all ties into everything the state is asking of us, and it's what's best for kids. So I think it's a great idea.
For me, it's a little difficult to answer that question because I'm not the one in the classroom. It'd be great to hear from some of the people that are with the kids every day, how our 3 goals are doing. And I mean, we hear from administration about how the schools in general are doing. And hopefully teachers, educators understand that they are part of the public and can be part of this process. So goals sound great to me, but I'd love to hear anyone's thoughts out there that are actually in the nitty-gritty every day. So at a future meeting, that's an encouragement out there to kind of tell us how it's going.
Well, and then the public needs to be informed that it's not everything that we do at the schools in this LCAP, and what are the boundaries of that we need to have in the document. That's what I always struggle with, because I'm thinking, you're doing this and you're doing that. Why isn't that in the LCAP? Because it kind of falls under that goal or that indicator. So that they need to realize that as well, that this isn't just what we're spending our money on. And I guess there is general fund money as well that's in the LCAP, but that's what I struggle with, because there's lots that's happening that's not in there, and I know the supplemental concentration funds and what we're doing to help all, the students that's geared for above the basic, just they need to realize that as well with their input, so it's meaningful. Because we're gonna get a lot of things that we don't need to roll into that. What are the parameters for that?
Right, and that's one of the misnomers, is that the LCAP does not incorporate every single activity that's done at every single school from August until June. That would be a 2,000-page document. What our LCAP does is it looks at our big goals and how the specific items that we're going to do to address those goals. What actions are we going to say, this is what we are going to do to move closer to those goals, and here's how we're going to use our supplemental and concentration dollars to address those goals. So our LCAP is very goal-driven. It's 100% about what we are going to do to address those specific goals, and it doesn't mean that that's the only thing we're going to do. Right? Because midway through the year, there might be a great opportunity to have someone come in or to do something that we didn't think of. It was kind of like the year that Kathy, you helped with the Dana Gray College Fair. That happened very organically. That wasn't written in our LCAP. But then after it happened, what did we do? We included it in our school plan because it was cool and it made the difference with kids. We saw a light bulb go on. We had great people. Okay, well, let's figure out if we're going to continue on or not. Does this make sense? So there are things that happen throughout the year that happen without forethought because an opportunity arises. The LCAP is really about looking at our district goals, how we're going to focus those supplemental and concentration dollars, and making it as transparent as possible.
I think also the LCAP helps if it comes to budget time and we need to make cuts. Anything, what's in the LCAP is kind of like sacred ground. Right? Things outside the LCAP, at least how I look at it, are things that we can consider cutting because they're not part of that core service that we provide. So again, if there are things not currently in our LCAP that people think that should be in there, it'd be great to hear about that.
Might be nice to know what percentage of our total budget is the LCAP too.
Is the supplemental concentration?
The LCAP is 70% of our total budget, or 60% or whatever.
The-
Hold on. I can tell you.
Right, because is there any general in the LCAP? I mean, there could be. And were you thinking that the high school students would come to our board chat, or that you were going to go to them?
No, that I would go to them during class time
Okay.
and have a little caucus in the library.
And we could probably have one year we had paper, it wasn't a Google form, but staff and parents were able to fill out, and I don't know who compiled it. This might have been before Anna. But people seemed to like, well, just areas, like some sort of, I don't remember, I could find it.
That was, I think, my first year on the board.
Yeah, I liked
And there
that.
was, it wasn't, Wendy's got a number.
It's almost 15%.
Because I think it was not an agendized meeting, so 2 board members were there, or maybe it was right before because I was attending. I don't remember anyway. It was around that era. So about 5 years ago. But 2 board members went, and then Wendy and/or the superintendent gave a presentation. Remember that? On the LCAP, and then people could provide feedback. And
There was a form.
Right, there was a form that people could fill out either before, during, or after those events. And I think there was the struggle for the board, maybe I was coming, anyway, is that if Mary and I were there and a parent came, the three of you didn't hear, and then you'd have to take and the soup's rendition of what the public was really saying. Yeah. So I think it was I'm not sure it was a perfect,
Well,
but Jerry could probably.
but I was a parent that had gone to all of them thinking they were different and unique, but but it was more informative. It was more getting information out. That's the way I took the presentation. And then the form went out to each site. So the staff, no, I don't think there was very few staff that went to these, little road show at different, I think there were 3 sites. But they had the opportunity to fill out I'll find the form. I'm sure I have it in my paperwork to
But
see.
you felt like it was pretty effective and.
Well, I just
well-
liked, that was the most response at that moment in time. I mean, we're getting different kind of response now because of the computer and Google Docs and Anna, but that was the first time I'd really seen some kind of engagement from the stakeholders, which included staff, family, kids.
Do you think it makes sense to do a quick survey for educators on the LCAP and how they, I mean, just to get their thoughts? Take a temperature of the district, see if the LCAP's in, I mean, you know, I don't know.
That, you know, I go back and forth about it, only because the LCAP is an important document for us. Most teachers will probably tell you that they do what they do in their classroom because it's best for kids. And they pay attention more so to their school plans.
Okay.
So their school plans are 100% though engulfed in the LCAP.
Okay.
Um,
So there's a connection there.
There's, absolutely. There's nothing that's happening in a school plan that's not in the LCAP.
Okay. Well, then
Um,
maybe, yeah.
But I
So,
think maybe, do you think there might be some, because I worry you get, when we send out other surveys, the percentage of staff that actually respond is very, very minuscule, for a better word. So maybe if we really wanted to get some of that feedback, if a leadership visit, similar to the site
Mhm.
plan, might be a better way to get, but I know those minutes are valuable too. But then you would get, they're not gonna come here at 6 o'clock at night, but
No.
maybe if you go to them and ask,
and I,
or
and-
even say, come after school on a Thursday at 3 o'clock in the teacher's room, maybe one of us could go to or whatever, and then just offer people, so it's not during meeting time, but it's a free, kind of like our board chat, but because I really think our board chat time is not a time for staff. They're getting busy, they're either supposed to be on contract time and supposed to be at work, or we thought the 7:45 would give them, 20 minutes to pop in or whatever, depending on their site, but it's not. I mean,
No.
We
Most
saw
of them have
one,
to be at work by then, so.
right. So I don't know, when I was a counselor at the high school, we did coffee with the counselor, and we were downtown in the evening in more of a public place that, a kid could come with a parent. I don't think parents feel that this is a very, if I had a 6-year-old to bring him, even for an hour to hear something, this is not really the place. But if we went somewhere, like we went to, it used, when, I don't even know the name of it, but the place that's in the strip mall there, where Lucy's, or is it Lucy's? What's the laundromat next to the show? There used to be the,
Redwood Avenue.
it's Javi, but now it was some
Yeah.
3
it was
names
a
ago.
Vienna Cafe or
Yeah,
something
so we
like that.
went there, again, trying to get a different population of our community, and Mark and I sat there, for a while and got some families, and we actually did an ELAC. One of the students that got reclassified came, and anyway, we did it there. But I don't know whether that would give us some different feedback from different parents. I just think parents club, site council, no offense, and I was one of those parents, it's the same parents. I'm not talking to some of the parents that don't feel comfortable coming to a site council meeting or on campus, and I know that our schools are doing, especially I love seeing the principals out in the morning talking to families and kids, but that's reaching a whole nother group of families, and I love it. But how do we get to them too, so that we can talk to them about this stuff? And I think the LCAP is supplemental, it's a very funneled group of what the money is spent on. Like, we're not gonna talk about athletics or, something else in the general columns, but I still think if we have that authentic, I don't know if you got any bright ideas at your conference about what schools do, because we can only have so many meetings and nobody come. We opened the room for the Google survey. We've done all kinds of things trying to get more families.
Well, and
I
that's,
like your idea though about for staff, because we aren't really very available except here. And to do that one at each school, I think is a really good idea.
well, and I'll start making the rounds, because one of the things that I continue to see with our supplemental and concentration dollars, there is a huge misunderstanding about it. Folks don't recognize or realize that money is given to us for our unduplicated count. And if we don't have a plan that says this is what we're using it for, because I had someone say, well, you have enough money to get a counselor at every site. You're right, because it's all out of supplemental and concentration. So that's how it's done. So
So I'm a little confused. I know the LCAP helps determine what these special 50% of funds can do, but it's also our strategic plan for the district. So,
because it's a 3-year plan.
right, I understand. So I just, athletics for one is not in the LCAP, correct?
Right.
But it's a big part of our district.
Yes.
So my question is, should we have part of the LCAP? Should athletics be a part of the LCAP? Not because we're going to use these funds for athletics, but because it's our plan. So just we don't have to answer that right now. I'm just kind of raising some.
It kind of gets muddy because really these are our guiding principles for our district.
Right.
And yet this money is very, what'd you say, 15%?
So,
But really
so the reason why it's a great confusing question, great question. Athletics is a big part of our district. And so when people say, well, Becky, how come we have so much money? I think we have $250,000 going towards athletics.
Yes, I
Something
read
like
it last
that.
night.
I wanna
It's
say-
220 and 20 or something like that.
Okay, so between the middle school and high school, we have about $250,000 going towards athletics. Every single penny that's in our budget, we should be able to identify a goal that penny is meeting. I would say athletics improves school culture.
Totally.
I would say that it increases student academic success because our kids do well when they're in a sport. We have kids who don't do well the entire year, but the minute they put on a uniform, that kiddo grades are all at C's or B's or better.
Yep.
And so when I look at our LCAP and we have goals, anything in our budget, we should be able to say, how does that address an LCAP goal? And someone says, well, how are you going to justify the maintenance crew? The maintenance crew is all about school culture. Because if we don't have good facilities, people are not going to want to come in and feel good about attending the school that they're at.
Yeah.
So what do you put in the LCAP and what do you not?
Right.
Okay? My understanding, just so that I'm muddily clear, is that the LCAP identifies our 3 main goals. Okay? Boom, we have our 3 main goals. Those have to fall in line with our vision and mission, right? And we've said, like in the past meeting, is what we're asking to spend money on does that address our vision and mission, okay? And it does, so that's how those are married. Then in our LCAP, for each one of those goals, we are going to specifically address how we're using our supplemental and concentration money to attack those goals, okay? Some of it is big, some of it's little, but it's specific to the supplemental and concentration. So we don't put athletics in our LCAP because we have no supplemental and concentration dollars going towards that. Okay, in athletics for us, we could argue that it goes beyond and above, and it's above the core, right? But we have been doing athletics since the dawn of man. So it's not something we brought in because we had supplemental and concentration dollars. Does that make sense?
So now I understand why some districts do have a strategic plan on top of the LCAP, because it can include things that this income doesn't pay
Yes.
for.
And the hard part with our LCAP is how much specificity do we include? You know, how much we want to be 100% transparent. We want folks to be able to open up the LCAP and say, oh, this is how those supplemental and concentration dollars are being spent. I can see what we're doing at Redwood. I can see what we're doing at Dana Gray. I can see what we're doing at all of our sites. Okay? But lots of general fund dollars aren't in there. Like, we have $2.5 million of our general fund being used for special education. Okay? That's not in our LCAP. That's because that's our core. We're supposed to do that whether we have money or not. Okay? So you're going to see some big chunks of our budget that are in your packet, and you'll say, well, how come that's not in our LCAP? Because our LCAP is really looking at our big goals in the district, what we're doing within the program to address those goals, those special things, and also how we're specifically using supplemental and concentration dollars. Does that help clear it up?
It does.
So the instructional coaches, that's above and beyond. We pay for them completely out of supplemental and concentration.
So the differentiated assistance money, is that included in the supplemental concentration, or is that above that? So
That's-
do we put that in the LCAP or no? Because that's helping, many districts are out of it now and they're upset to lose
Well,
that money.
that is covering some of the things that we had in our LCAP to do. So when we do the update for this year, we'll show that it was paid for out of multiple pots.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna pause and see if there's any feedback or input from the audience. Okay. Please, and introduce yourself. I do.
We're recording.
Hi, I'm Beth Pine, and I am the coordinator for Dana Gray Kudos. And as you're talking, I just want to give a little feedback from what I've heard. First of all, I this week asked one of the teachers at Dana Gray if they were going to go to the LCAP budget meeting, and the teacher said, "What was LCAP standing for again?" So if you go into the sites, I think that would be great. I think the teachers might have some feedback. And the parents don't know what LCAP stands for either.
Local
And-
control area plan.
Yes, but they don't know that.
Right.
So anytime I talk to anybody about LCAP, it's like, what do those letters stand for? What does it mean? And if the board is somewhat confused as to what's in the LCAP and what it entails, I'm pretty sure the parents are more so. And so
And let me just pause because I was corrected. Local control
accountability plan, yes. So, yeah, I try to educate people what the letters stand for and what the meetings are about and why they are important to everybody, from parents to teachers to my kudos staff. So, thank you for letting me give some input.
Thank you, Beth.
And also, don't we have like a synopsis of the LCAP, a 5-page that's, so you
We
don't
actually
have
have
to
a
read
little
90
trifold
pages.
brochure or something that we get through
Well, no, there's
DTS.
the overview for parents. It's a couple pages long.
Right, so you don't have
It's
to
a
read all
snapshot.
90 pages, you're right, to get just an idea of what it's about.
The title, Local Control Accountability Plan, was a direct result of the local control funding formula.
Mhm.
And so they're asking us to be accountable because a big part of that formula has to do with your funding based on your unduplicated count. So that's why the accountability plan focuses so heavily on the supplemental concentration dollars. And the LCAP is not the supplemental concentration dollars. The supplemental concentration dollars are part of the LCAP. So that's, people kind of use the term interchangeably, and it's not really.
Please.
Always have lots of ideas. Hi, I'm Rick Kale. I'm principal of Dana Gray Elementary School. One of the things that you had said, which I think is really brilliant, is getting connecting with parents. It's like, and actually Anna and I were talking about this, that like these meetings are some of the most important ones that sort of roll around, and there's nobody here. I can't speak for the other sites, but I think Redwood sort of follows this same pattern. But not that you guys want to do this, but if one or two of you were at Dana Gray from 8 o'clock to 8:35 and at Dana Gray from 2:45 to 3:10, you'd have parents all over the place, all over the place. And you know, the way that, and some folks have seen me out there like wandering around, I mean, it is about sort of grabbing onto your school culture and like making sure that parents know that this is a welcoming place and a fun place and a good place for children. And that kind of immediate one-to-one contact with parents would be the way that you would connect with a dozen, 24 parents just immediately. It would be boring after a while because it's always the same parents. I mean, but those parents that are there are not the ones that are at the parents club. They're not the ones that are at the site council or whatever. But if you had some very specific question, you wouldn't like throw it, here's the 50-page, questions that we want you to answer. But some very specific questions, some very specific ideas about feedback that you wanted from them, and then an opportunity to educate them about what it is and why it's important. That would be a great place. I really, really would. And you kind of have a captive audience. At 3:01 every, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, you have a very captive audience that's standing there waiting, and they're kind of bored. So anyway, just an idea.
So
Thank you,
that
Mr.
is a
Kale.
great idea.
That is.
And I know we've done surveys that way, but the trick with that was having something on the computer. They didn't have time because they were like heading off to work. But I could see the benefit of having paper and say, hey, can you fill this out? This is the LCAP. Look on, the website, and then tomorrow we'll be here. If you could fill it out and bring it back tomorrow. I mean, I don't know.
Or
I-
come back with a question or a
Exactly,
comment or a-
just because I think that you'd have to do it like 2 days in a row or twice a week or something, because they're not going to have time to chat authentically because they're heading off to their next gig. But I see the power of getting a different pocket of families.
And, sorry, I'm far away, but you have families that are at the distance. Like, what I've done to try and get folks to the parents club and whatever. Like, if you're standing at the front door of Dana Gray, you see them out there and out there and out there. And if you wander out to them, you can, hey, do you want to be part of the school?
So you're wanting us to walk to their cars as they're waiting for their
Round their
children.
window.
I'm willing to do that. I think I look pretty friendly.
And anyway, I mean, again, yeah, most people in Fort Bragg are really, really nice.
Yes.
And yeah, they would
Quick
give you
question.
nice responses.
Before you go, is it the 2:45 to 3:10? I feel like is a better time to catch people, not as like
Yes.
dashing off as opposed to the
Yes.
morning where you're going, can't talk now, I'm off to work. or
In the
whatever."
morning, you get a lot of stress and a lot of,
Right.
the later, the afternoons. And if you were to do multiple times to, like, try and educate and then ask them a question, then come back and, hey, I saw you here on Monday and we talked about da-da-da. What did you think about that? They're much more relaxed in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, much
what I
much more
thought.
friendly.
Yeah.
Because they're about to, I'm sorry,
No, go
they're
ahead.
about to experience a happy moment because they're going to see their little baby coming out of the
Right.
door. So,
Oh, I miss
they're,
those days.
anyway. But it's the same effect at Redwood,
And a brochure you could just hand them. They could look
I
at it.
like
Maybe
it.
those would
Yeah,
generate
I
even
do
more
too.
questions. Something fairly simple.
I think we should do it.
I'm gonna add to that and say, if you come between 4:45, 5:15, you'll get a whole nother group
That's true.
of parents, the
Right.
ones that are working,
Right.
or the
Yeah.
ones whose, kids are struggling academically and need to be with us.
I like that.
And they do a lot, there's a lot between 4:45, 5:15. That's
Yeah.
when the majority of the parents show up.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you very
that's
much,
great.
both of you. That's some great feedback.
Might be, Becky, if you're willing, going back to the educators, the ones that are responsible for implementing most of the LCAP goals. I don't know if you want to put in the staff blog that we're in this process. We'd love to hear from
Oh,
them,
yeah,
Good idea.
good idea.
something.
And then it's not on the agenda, so we can't talk about it till next week under future items. But let's see if we can put a couple dates on the calendar where we either in addition to or instead of do board chat in the morning to do it at some
Oh,
time, so staff.
That's a great
can-
idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Perfect.
So what I will do is I will work with admin to find a time when we have a no meeting day. Right? It's got to be when there's nothing going on after school, and then what we could do is maybe we could do something in either the Dana Gray conference room or the high school library, so that folks don't have to. Some folks, it's just a walk down the hall or a walk across the street. And then maybe we can do something in the DO conference room and Redwood can just come across. And then we can do something at the middle school, just so that we're coming to people instead of expecting them to come to us at the DO. They're more likely to walk down the hall than they are to get in their car and drive, even if it's just a mile away.
Or what if we were just out front? I mean, capturing, especially at the after, because I think that they don't really want to go to a scary room. If it's open, I don't know if that's more approachable.
Well, I would love to just be able to sit down with folks and say, to tell us what would make, I mean,
that
for
would be
teachers,
good.
tell us, if we had all the money in the world, what would make the job what would help you be more successful. For kids, you've been here now for 13 years. If we could wave a magic wand, what would that look like? Knowing that we can't do everything, right? Because someone will say, well, you really need to buy, every teacher a new car. Well, wouldn't that be nice? And I'm being facetious, clearly.
But I think we're talking about two different things, like what
But it's
you're
still
talking
part
about
of
is
the.
more staff, and what you're talking about is
Us
more
parents.
parents.
Well, but that's what
Both
I.
are,
Correct.
both
So,
are
but I-
great.
But
Parents needs to be
three,
out front.
three.
Yeah.
That needs
you
to
know,
be in that space.
I'd like to see three different things. Us
Okay.
looking, really talking to kids and also talking to our 8th graders.
Yeah, I wrote down, I think, I know this might consider I'm in the weeds, but my experience with children is that by 12th grade, depending on who you pick, you're gonna get, I don't know, you're gonna get some real, you will get some authentic feedback, but at that point, it might be a little negative and a little,
They're done.
yes. But if we maybe did one exit at every.
At
the
every school.
Exit grade at every grade, and I know at Redwood, they're gonna tell you, I want more recess, and I want, but I am amazed at when you ask children questions, what you will get, and we may get some really
Mhm.
surprising answers.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Well,
not
if
about
you pose your
blue and-
question right.
Right, if, whether it's about technology or whether it's about, I don't know, I think that if, because I've always been saying this, that I want to do focus groups with kids for the LCAP, because I think they have a lot of information
Mm-hmm.
that we're not tapping into.
I would agree with you.
So
I would agree
if-
with you.
We kind of did the exit groups,
So then
2,
maybe
5,
what
8.
what I will try and do is work with the administration to find maybe 20 minutes for me to go into every 5th grade classroom and to do a circle, and to give the kids some prep, before we get into the circle. And there's lots of different configurations of circles that we can do so that we can ask the question, they can talk in their group, someone can come out and be the spokesperson and say, this is what we talked about. And, but just gaining some information from our 5th grade, and then giving every 5th grade class a time, and then going to Fort Bragg Middle School and maybe hitting all the 8th grade English classes.
Or advisor, or they have their advice, don't they have an Avid Monday? Would that be appropriate?
They have some homeroom thing, but I don't know.
It just,
Yeah.
smaller groups are better
Okay.
instead of
Oh,
trying to
gotcha.
do the
I
whole
gotcha.
group. So
Gotcha.
we can find a good time for me to do that. And then coming into Fort Bragg High School and seeing if there's a volunteer, group of seniors who would want to come in and talk, or sending out invites, or doing it through the government classes, because this really is a perfect government topic, to be quite honest with you. So let me talk with the administrators and ask them to go out and have a chat with their peeps and get a plan going. And hopefully I can have something to report on next Thursday. We'll do it quickly so we can move on this. And then as far as parents go, I love the options of times. Because I think coffee with the principal at Redwood is a good time after mamas and daddies drop off their kiddos. If it's a relevant topic, we've usually seen quite a few parents there. I love the idea of 2:45 to 3:10 at Dana Gray. Hadn't even occurred to me, but you just picked up your Redwood kiddo, you go to Dana Gray, and you wait. So if we opened up the conference room and just maybe even had some snacks so that the Redwood kiddos who are there had some coloring and maybe some snacks while we have a 15-minute conversation with moms and dads. And I also like the idea of the 4:45 to 5:15, because those are our working moms and dads who need to have a voice and a choice, right? And then for our older kiddos, maybe what we do is we do some kind of time before a big event. Like I was just thinking right now, tonight is freshman information night, right? Wouldn't it have been great if I had the idea of holding an LCAP meeting a half hour before freshman information night?
Take advantage of the crowd.
Right. Or the last 15 minutes of freshman information night. Thank you all for being here. We're having our LCAP 15-minute board chat. If you'd like to join us, we might be able to make it.
Or
But-
even like Diana was
you
saying,
could probably
just
run over
giving
now.
flyers out,
Right.
just
So,
having that
I think
information.
we need to think of those things. We don't think of those things sometimes because when we have these meetings, we're all just running around as fast as we can. But I like the fact that we take time in this meeting to have those discussions. And that's why people ask, well, why are you having a discussion? No one's gonna come. Because the only time I have to talk to you together is in a meeting. It's the only time we get to discuss this. It's the only time I can get all 5 of you together, and it's the only time that I can be that we can have a banter back and forth about any of the ideas that we have. So I appreciate that you're taking time out to add these special meetings so we can have the opportunity to be transparent and have conversations. So, and moving forward, I am going to work with staff to arrange meetings with the 5th grade, the 8th grade, and seniors.
Now, Becky, I know you need to hear the information because you're the one essentially that writes the plan. But do you think there's a way to either have someone else or us, or 2 of us, go in and record it so that you just
Well, I was
have-
gonna invite Anna.
Well, I was trying to keep you so that all you had to do was listen, so that you only had to take that 20 minutes.
No, I'm
not
serious.
all-
No, I'm serious. I really was gonna invite Anna or a principal to be with me, so that I'm not.
You're not understanding though. The 10 minutes before that you have to get the stuff ready, the 10 minutes after, I mean, if you just had to listen to are you following me? So you only had to listen to the actual feedback from your constituents and not the other stuff. Your time is getting spread thinner and thinner every year. And you are working later and later every year. So I don't mean to put this out in public in front of God and everybody, but you are one employee and we have to save you.
Well,
I want you.
if you read the paper, I make way too much anyway, so.
Well, I missed that, but working the hours you work,
Well,
I would argue that.
this is,
However.
this is just a process. This is part
No,
of.
I understand that, but
Short term.
you are, I'm trying to.
No, I hear you, and I think this is a good investment of time. And
I'm
if
sure
I'm
you would love
on
to
a
do the kids,
campus, I really
That doesn't
should
provide that.
be in the
It's the
room.
extra
We'll have the teacher there, and truly, sorry, I was going to invite Anna so that there could be a note taker, so that I could go back and when we report to you, I can look at Anna and say, this is how I remember it, and Anna could say, well, this is what I have in the minutes. And I can be engaged with the kids to see what that is, invite the principal to be with me for these 20-minute circles, invite the teacher to have activities around it if that's what they would like to do, or just give me the opportunity to be with your class for 20 minutes. And it doesn't have to be labor intensive, but I'm spending every Tuesday in classrooms anyway. It's
Right.
just a renegotiation of that time. And
I
it's,
think it'll be and I know you will get your kid mojo too. I know how being removed out of classrooms is sometimes
it's hard.
hard for an educator, so I honor that. I just also want to honor that your calendar is extremely full and puts your day very, very late many times. So if there's any way that we can help support that, please let us know.
Well, thank you. So in recap, I'm going to work with the
We're
administrators
adding more
for,
to your plate.
that's okay, for 5th graders, 8th graders, and 12th graders. I'm going to look at providing different times to meet with the staff, and I'll start advertising that in the staff blog. I will coordinate with the administrators so that those can be done on days where there are no existing meetings, so that people, we don't present an internal conflict. And then look to organizing times with the principals for an 8 to 8:30 or a 2:45 to 3:10. High school and middle school are a little bit different breed of cat. We don't necessarily have parents hanging out at the high school.
But they're on this street. If
Yeah.
anybody
It's a-
picks up, that we
it's
could
a
walk
fair
up
amount.
and
You
down
just
this
walk up and
street.
down the street.
Yeah.
It's a
And-
fair amount,
Because you can't find a place to park.
right.
So if you walked up and down Chestnut, or no, this is Dana, that's Chestnut. If you walked up and down Dana Street, you could hit
If you,
And
probably
this parking lot
20.
right
you could
here
get it,
just-
Yeah.
yeah, easily.
Well,
Fair.
and maybe what we need to do is we need to have kind of that folio of
Mhm,
the
the
brief
flyer.
LCAP and
Yeah.
just talk to folks and say, hey, you know, if there's something more that we can do or specific things, and then really educate people that our supplemental and concentration dollars are supposed to be geared towards our unduplicate account, and what can we do to make the educational goals more alive. And then how do we gear that money towards improving our school experience? And that's a little touchy, because school experience, I say that tongue in cheek, because kind of like the second graders, well, we should have more recess, we should have better food, right? We might have people say, well, we want more electives, we want more art and music, and I get that. The hard part is that we're going to have some really tough conversations about that, because we have to be able to show that whatever we use this money for, it's specifically addressing our goals and improving our student outcomes with the metrics that we are held accountable to. The suspension rate, right? Chronic absenteeism rate, our math and English language arts scores, graduation rate. So all those things are hugely important.
And I just want to go back to a comment, Kathy, you made earlier about when just two of you or us are in the room, the other three can't be. And I don't want that to ever be a reason why any of us don't attend anything outside of a board meeting. Because if two of you come in and say, we attended this and this was our thought, you know, I kind of trust and take that as, I mean, it's not the board saying that, but it's, I mean, you're representing the activities you did and the thoughts you have and observations that you made. And I just, you know, I think it's the more we can get out there, not as a board, and then
Well,
report back.
And here's the difference. How many times have the 5 of you shown up to the choir concert or the band concert or scholarship night? As long as you're not talking to each other, the 5 of you can be in a room.
Right.
You just can't talk to each other.
About anything.
About
schools.
agenda,
About-
about
right.
agenda items.
We can talk about our dolphins.
We can talk about Survivor.
That's great.
So,
But I think we should definitely be at some of these things, because I think not only the staff/board chat thing that we were talking about, not only is it about LCAP, but I think we need to get out and
Agreed.
be accessible to staff too.
Yeah,
If they don't come, then we won't worry about it again, but.
I was gonna ask if you could let us know when some of that happens.
yeah, I will put it in my staff blog. And I'll put it in the board,
Can we
in the
have
weekly
them
update.
earlier, the dates, just because a week ahead may be rough?
As soon as I get them, I'll get them to you.
Okay. Or
Plus
if
we'll
we
have to
put
go
it in
through
a-
the
I don't
year to figure
anticipate
out who
anything
goes
until
No, I-
after the February break. My calendar is pretty packed right now.
No, that's fine. I'm just saying that if I know about things ahead of time, I can not double book, but I think it would be nice for us to be there.
And when's our next LCAP discussion meeting?
I think we just have them on the next, the regular board meetings as ongoing topics. We don't have a special meeting. I want to say in April we have a special meeting. Is that the next one?
I'm just
Just
saying,
like-
because it'd be
yeah.
good to have some of this stuff before we.
Well, I'm
this on
hoping to
our
have all
agenda.
this done and have a report for you at the March board meeting.
There is
So,
a special, or supposed, in April.
We
For
haven't set
the
the date
LCAP.
yet, right?
No. Or is that one? I don't know. If that's been in
Mine,
April.
mine, it went away. Well, there's no date
Right.
for a special.
That's for second benchmark and budget.
and we could include LCAP on that if you'd like to include LCAP discussion.
Well, I think we should get some feedback
Yeah.
first.
Okay.
And then some.
LCAP Parent Advisory Committee meeting. April.
Okay, that was the one that I was talking about when I said the April one. But
That's
I think we
separate from
moved
our
those into
special.
the board chats. That's, okay, so what we'll do is we'll have a more comprehensive calendar specific to this. And I can put that in my superintendent report next week because the agenda hasn't been posted for the regular board meeting yet. So we'll put that in the superintendent report. That will have LCAP dates and locations.
Well, no, it needs to be in March because your calendar's full this week.
But I'll,
Didn't want to do it till after the break.
right, so if I advertise it in next Thursday's meeting, it'll be after the break.
But you're not gonna have the dates and everything by that. I'm just.
I might.
Okay.
Might. We will. If Anna says we will, then it'll happen.
Right.
That's right.
So, and on next Thursday, there's only one day right? The 14th, and then we go to break. That's why. It's a good time to bring that out. Okay. Questions? Thank you all. Good discussion,
So
and thank you
let-
for public input.
So I think we had a really good discussion about how to involve parents and families and students. Are we still feeling confident with the 3 goals and the change in the wording of the second one? Let's take a few minutes.
Mhm.
Based on our internal discussion so far, definitely. We'll see what feedback, if any, we get from the community.
All righty. So we'll, if there's no further questions or comments, we'll move on to budget planning.
Okay, so information is dribbling in, and it really is just dribbling about what the governor's proposed budget means for us. And so I don't have a lot of really hard, fast numbers. Because of the way we did registration and the request for family income information, our unduplicated amount number has gone up, which is nice. I mean, the high school and middle school were always challenging to get that information from. Excuse me. And so we had a lot better participation, and so our unduplicated count is hovering closer to 80% now than it was before. We were at 71, 72 before. So that means absolutely nothing for our ongoing base money. That will remain exactly the same. What we're going to see is some more supplemental concentration money. And so we're going to have to be very deliberate about what we do, and Becky talked about that a little bit before. There are a number of, one of the reasons that this is becoming more of an issue is, and this appalled me because we've been doing it all along, the state auditors looked at 3 different districts throughout the state to look at what they were doing with their supplemental concentration money. They looked at Oakland, Clovis, and San Diego, and they found that the state hasn't ensured that it's benefiting the intended student groups. The state does not explicitly require districts to spend their supplemental concentration money on the intended student groups or track their spending of those funds, which is bizarre to me because that was sort of beaten into us at the beginning that was important, and so we've always done that. I mean, I feel like the kid in the class who got in trouble even though they weren't involved in whatever was going on, you know. We're going to end up being held to this higher accountability standard, even though we've sort of been doing this all along. And the things that they're suggesting are, require the state to develop and implement a tracking mechanism to report the types and actions of services, okay, and annually reconcile the expenditures to the amount apportioned by the state and require unspent funds to retain their supplemental concentration designation in the following year. Well, we have done that since day one. So I have absolutely no concerns about this additional oversight coming down on our supplemental concentration funds. I feel pretty comfortable with that. But it has been a challenge because we're a small district. It's difficult to go too far beyond the core because we don't have enough students, staff, things to add a lot more stuff, because then you're spreading everything too thin across it. Does that make sense? So we are going to need to be very, very thoughtful and deliberate about how we use this money, but it does give us opportunities to do things that we haven't been able to do, like you were saying something about bringing people in the summer to work on. I mean, that would be a good use of that, and we might have that ability with this additional funding. The ongoing money, the concern there is we're getting 2.29% cost of living adjustment only on all of our regular ongoing money. And the problem with that is our ongoing expenses are increasing by closer to 4%. And so that's a continuing challenge. And while our budget is showing funding, money left over at the end of each year, it's dropping quite a bit each year because our deficit spending is increasing. So we do have funds available, but we do have to be careful about continuing to increase that deficit. So we will need to look at things to change in the next, as we get into this budget process. I don't, well, depending on what else happens, we aren't looking at drastic things, but there will have to be some reorganizing of certain priorities outside of the supplemental concentration area. The other issue with this budget is there are a lot of little dribs and drabs of things that may or may not apply to us, that may or may not be useful to us, that are all one time, and that makes it very challenging. For instance, the increase in the special ed funding, and we talked about this last time, is not going to impact us because our SELPA is already funded at a rate higher than the base they're trying to bring up. So we're going to be held harmless for that, but we're not going to see any additional funds. We are getting the additional preschool, special ed preschool money, but the SELPA has already reduced our allocation of other monies to offset that. So again, it's more money that the state is putting out, but we're not necessarily going to see the benefit of that. And that's very difficult to explain because people see how much more money the state is putting into education, but it's really kind of a shell game, and it's not being funneled down to where it really, and we're losing more local control all the time. We're getting back into the days of those categoricals where every little pot of money has got strings tied to it, which is a shame. There was nothing in this budget to help with the STRS and PERS increases. The amount they put in last year did reduce the anticipated increases for the next couple of years, so that was helpful. There are no one-time discretionary monies this time. Our mandated block grant money is only going up by COLA. So those are the challenges really for us, is how to continue funding even our core with not enough base money increase. Like I said, about 17% of our certificated staff is paid out of supplemental concentration, so there is some availability there for the increases to that portion would come out of there, but the rest of it, the vast majority of it, does not. So we have to figure out how to do that. There's a little bit more money coming in from school nutrition. They're funding at a higher rate per meal a little bit next year, and the general consensus is that will go through, because all of these proposals are just that, proposals at this point. It could mean about $20,000 to us. So, it all helps, but it's not a huge thing for us. There's a lot of, again, these smaller pockets. There is some one-time money that's going to be available for teacher recruitment and retention plans. Again, it doesn't look like a whole lot of money, but it may, and I don't know what it looks like, how they're going to allocate it, or if we qualify for it. We don't know how targeted that's going to be yet. Let's see, what else did we have in here? We talked about that. So really the biggest thing I think we're going to have to look at is the best use for some of those supplemental concentration dollars, because we have not been spending it all. And so it is an area where if there are things we want to do, and there are some things that we're doing now using one-time money, like the low-performing students block grant that we're using to fund the counselor. Well, my guess is that program is going to has already shown itself to be useful enough that we'll probably take that over with supplemental concentration dollars because of the targeted students that's hitting. And because our unduplicated account is so high, we can do things district-wide. We don't have to be quite as targeted as some districts do with their student groups, because it'd be hard for us to miss, doing something that's helping some of our unduplicated count students. But it's still, there's a pretty specific little worksheet that they gave us that provided us that, it's pretty nice because it kind of simplifies the thought process a little bit. Is the activity required by law? Well, if it is, then it doesn't qualify, so you can't use that. Is it going to increase or improve services above what's provided? Well, a lot of the things we do are that. So, sometimes that's but it's identifying the core that is the challenge. Is what is core, and so that's going to be part of our challenge. And then the other part is looking at what we can do to revamp our salary schedule. But it's a challenge, and we're going to have to make some choices there, I think. So, like I said, it's coming in dribs and drabs, and I'm starting to see how I'm not seeing a huge impact on our revenues there. I'm starting to communicate with the county on what we can expect from reimbursement for the transfer of the ED program. I'm also finding out from them when this preschool money goes away one time, are they going to restore the money that they offset because we got this, or is it just going to go away after that? So, we're looking at all those things, and so this was a little early for me to have a real comprehensive idea of where we are. But we have the second interim report will be in March, and we'll have it all nailed down by then.
So, Wendy, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You don't know I'm going to ask this question. Could you just give a brief synopsis of our lottery money, how it's used, and the difference between the restricted and the unrestricted? There seems to be a lot going on right now about people not understanding where that money's going, because years ago, remember when it all started, it was decades ago, that was going to be the answer to public education. So could you talk about lottery monies just for us, please?
So the lottery money comes in two pots. One is completely unrestricted, and we allocate the largest percent of that to the sites for their use, and they use it for consumables, they use it for some of their copier supplies, they use it for some programs that they want to do that the district isn't funding necessarily. They
So
use
stop
some of
there
it.
for just a second. So that unrestricted money, when the site principals come to you with their budgets, for discretionary budgets, that's in large part unrestricted lottery money, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's one part. That's not a huge chunk of change, but for the sites right now, the high school gets 40, the middle school gets 30, and Dana Gray and Redwood both get 25, so that's 50, and 70 is 120, and Alt Ed gets 5, so that's 125,000. That's one chunk of lottery money.
Right, and which is more than half of all that comes in. And a big chunk of that goes to our copier leases. We use that for that. And for the odd things that come up that we weren't expecting. What did we just do with discretionary that was something that we were like, okay, we'll use discretionary for it, because it was just something we totally out of the blue that we didn't expect. I think it was something that broke or needed to be replaced, and so that's where that came from. So
Maybe the washing machine?
no, it wasn't that. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but that's where that comes from. So that's about, we're expecting about 268,000 this year in unrestricted lottery money, and about half of it gets distributed out to the sites. The restricted lottery money is intended to be used for textbooks and state-approved curriculum. That we're expecting about $89,000 this year for that. Some years we spend it, and some years we squirrel it away, knowing that $89,000 isn't going to cover a full adoption of something, especially science and math books. They're very expensive. So this year we're going to go through
The
all of
majority of it, so.
from what we carried over and what we're expecting this year. So next year we'll have to start all over again with our planning on it.
So just so you know, I've notified the middle school and the high school, because we've done, if you've noticed over the last 4 years, we've done the math books, right? Then we did, at the middle school and high school, we focused on getting the science curriculum done, so we've done that. We've done bits and pieces of the social studies curriculum, like we got the world history books. So now this is the final stop for middle school and high school, because we've said, after this, we're gonna be looking at K-5, we're gonna be squirreling it away for the next big K-5 adoption, which is going to be social studies and science. So, we told the middle school and high school, if this is it for science and social studies, so figure out where you're at. So the middle school is looking at 6-8 social studies adoption. They're piloting some books right now. The goal is that they're going to have something to you either in the March or April regular meeting. It'll be on display for 30 days, and then we'll get cost sheets and all that again. But that's what we've been using our restricted lottery money for, is mainly for textbooks. And we've been trying to do it very incrementally, because $89,000 a year is not a whole lot to get a bunch of stuff done. So just so that it's out there, so people who go back and look at this wonderful meeting on YouTube can see where the lottery monies are going. It's not a huge chunk of change, and it's definitely not enough to build a building.
But, so is it like, someone wins a lottery, the place they bought the ticket gets some money? So if someone wins a lottery in our district, will we get
More?
a big chunk of that?
No.
I didn't think so.
Nice
but I
idea,
thought
unless they're really generous and,
Well,
want to make a large donation to the school district so that they can, not have to claim all that on their taxes. It's a great planning tool, by the way. So, no, it doesn't. It's based completely on lottery sales. It's a formula based completely on the lottery sales. So, which, goes up a lot when people are all excited when something gets to a big number, and then more people buy in. And so, we've seen some, little increases in that. I mean, I think since it's gone up, it's probably gone up 15% since I started. So it's,
People are still playing the lotto.
it's
Yeah.
I
gradually
guess I
increasing.
should support lottery.
Right.
I've never
Go buy lottery
purchased.
Maybe
tickets.
just donate your money to the,
Yeah.
some more money.
So again, it doesn't,
Donate a lot.
the money we get has no effect on how many tickets were bought in this area. It just all goes to
Not
the
in this
state,
area,
the
it's just the
just-
state, right,
Mm-hmm.
right. And the state bases it on the enrollment in the state.
Well, and the quote that always rings true to me is that we have enough money to do anything we want. We just don't have enough money to do everything we want. And that just is so, we're just so restricted on how, we just don't have unlimited funds.
And the hard part, we're a working school district. So, and what I mean by that is, we have our budget allocated, and we are running programs and doing certain things. And we live in a small town. So when you don't do the same things in the same way in the following year, that disrupts the status quo. And I have to tell you, I'm all about disrupting the status quo to a certain extent, but we just have to make sure whatever we decide we're going to do, we need to make sure we have a purposeful plan, and that it does address what our goals are, and it does fall in line with our mission and vision, so that we're not just randomly all of a sudden, we're going to offer underwater basket weaving because we have a great pool, right? It has to be strategic in what we do. And the other hard part is, we've had great ideas and wonderful things that we've wanted to implement. We simply can't get the staff to do it. We struggle to find we struggle to hire because we have a housing shortage in our town. And we know that our salaries are not as competitive as other areas. So this goes back to the adage of how do we prioritize our dollars and what comes first, the chicken or the egg? So, you know, we talk about this all the time. We want to give our staff more money. We absolutely want to raise those salary schedules so that we can kind of throw it out there and say, let's hire, and we have 20, 30, 40 applications. But in order to do that, we have to decide from our limited pot of money, what's going to give. And, you know, we'll say if we throw out a 1% or we throw out a 1.5%, people will always say, well, that's not enough. I agree. It's not enough. But if that's all we can do, is it better than doing nothing? Or do we say, okay, we're going to dig deep. This is the commitment. And we are going to reprioritize everything we do in this district and eliminate program or eliminate things, right? In order to free up those dollars to do the heavy lifting on the salary schedules that we want.
Right,
And there's really no way around it. There's no magic money that we're hiding.
right.
We do have a small board reserve that has been the priority so that we don't go back into a qualified budget again. But that board reserve, even if we were to relinquish that altogether,
not enough.
that's not enough to even do, you know, I mean, we're not doing a 10 or a 5% raise with that. So that's the conundrum. We have to come together as a board and as a district and say, okay, here are the priorities. This is our LCAP. This is what we're going to do. And then how do we stay focused on that? So the budget is it's important for us to stay focused on that because everything is a domino effect. You push one button, something else pops open or comes undone.
Right, and that's if you were to look at things like how can we do something different to be more efficient, and then that would free up dollars. But it's difficult because, like you said, we're so used to doing, if we do everything that we're doing, there's no like secret money somewhere, you know, it's
Right.
all committed. And so we just have to look at things differently to see if it opens up or frees up money.
And to give you an idea, you know, we made the commitment that we wanted to focus on our instruction and really improve that, which is why we have the instructional coaches. I truly believe they're making a big difference. But in order to make that a priority, it meant that when our curriculum and instruction EL director retired, we chose not to fill that position. Now, I will tell you, I miss that position a whole lot. Okay? Every administrator misses that position a whole lot. But the priority was to shore up our core instruction
And support teachers.
and support our teachers. So that means that I don't have to like it. So, you know, and I'm not trying to make a martyr out of myself. I'm just saying that those are the things that we have to talk about. You know, if this is what we want to do and this is going to be the priority, then what over here are we going to give up? And that's the difficult part. We're not really in a position to be able to say, okay, well, let's have it all. We can't have it all. You know, we might be in a position to be able to maybe add some things through supplemental and concentration, but again, it's got to be incredibly targeted. What is it doing to address that unduplicated count? And what is it doing to address the specific goals outlined in our LCAP? And that's why we do things like continue to write grants. So we will know end of May if our application for the Learning Communities School Success Program, which is the Prop 47 funds, if our grant application is going to be accepted, because that will offer us a little bit more as we move into next year. It's for additional program, not in lieu of something. So, but that's where we're at as a school district.
When you mentioned earlier a 4% increase in ongoing funding, where does that number generally?
Ongoing expenses.
Expenses, that's what I meant.
That's the state's estimate of the average district's
Okay, so that's not
cost
specific
of
to us,
increases.
just-
It's not specific to us. It feels pretty true, though, to me. You know, it's definitely increasing more than cost of living.
And so just to put that in layman terms, so people are watching what was just said here, if we change nothing for next year, we leave staffing exactly the way it is right now, we change nothing. No one retires, No one quits. We hire no one. It all stays, boom, just like we have it right now, February 6th. We are going to have increases next year because PERS is going up, STIRS is going up, because we're moving up a year, right? Most employees will get a step or a column increase or just a step increase, but there is a built-in raise on our salary schedules, correct? Okay, so if nothing changes and we just move into next year, our total increase to start August 1, we will have an increase. So if we were in a position where the budget didn't change at all and we stayed with everything that we have right now, we would have to look at each other and say, okay, what are we gonna cut? We are getting, the COLA that has been discussed in the state, it's not solid yet, is 2.9%.
2.29.
Oh, great, 2.29. But the difficulty is that if we look at our expenses, and those expenses are going up by 4%, okay, that's where you do the math. And then everyone always says the same thing. Well, schools always cry poor. You're right. Schools always figure it out. We have to. The kids are coming whether we don't figure it out or not. And the hard part is, I said this at Rotary the other day, we are existing in a broken system. We are existing in a broken system. It is completely 100% unfair. And I'm going to go on my bandwagon just because you're all here. But we get about $10,800 per pupil when you look at all of our funding sources, because we are attendance driven. Kid comes to school, we get paid. Kid doesn't come to school, we don't get paid for that kid that day. We are attendance driven. We are not a basic aid district. That means a district like St. Helena, and let me just say out loud, God bless St. Helena. What a great district, great people, great community, they're wonderful. They're a basic aid district. They get a little over $34,000 per pupil.
Oh, my goodness.
That is 300% more than what we get. That is more than 300% more than what we get.
And
Okay.
that's whether the kid attends or not.
And that's whether the kid attends or
both.
not. They're not driven on attendance. So if everybody in that school district decided that, you know, we're just gonna take a day off, all the kids, they're still gonna get paid. Okay, this is a broken system. It's what we have, and it's not St. Helena's fault. Like I said, more power to them. I would like to be St. Helena. Okay, and I begrudge nothing to them. You know, I'd take 2,000 more a kid and be happy. But this is the broken system that we're in.
So for people watching this meeting, why do they get one system and we get another?
Because they are basic aid. That means their property taxes provide them more money for schools than the state minimum apportionment. Our property taxes do not provide us more than the state minimum apportionment. Okay, that's why we're here. It's a broken system.
Right.
It's not fair at all. But
like-
this is what we have. And the hard part is we're the recipient of public funds. So how do we go to Sacramento and fight this battle? Because this is big time lobbying and legislation. You know, if I'm a stakeholder in St. Helena, you think I want Fort Bragg Unified's apportionment? Heck no. Okay, I don't want Fort Bragg Unified's apportionment. So the hard part is how do you do the job, teach the kids, work with the families, manage the budget, and then figure out how to politically get yourself involved to change the broken system? And I don't have the answer to that. I do not.
Well, it's a little too late because in my mind, you think 6 million kids in California, we should all get the same.
Well,
Every kid should get the same.
and it doesn't
But
work
it's-
that way.
But it's backwards
So-
because it's driven on the property.
And just so you know, I went to the superintendent symposium last week, and I asked the people who are with AXA and said, do our legislatures know that it's this disparaging? And they said no. And I said, okay, well, that's my first letter writing campaign. Like our state legislatures have no idea that there is that big of a discrepancy between districts. That's why it's one of the reasons why Oakland struggles. They're ADA in the middle of the Bay Area
Of wealth.
of wealth. How do you compete with that? You know, we are fortunate in Fort Bragg that because we are behind the redwood curtain and we are so isolated, most people who move here and most people who work here move here. So we have our staff teaching our kids. So when you move here, your children go here. The hard part for us right now as we move into the budget, we recognize that we have to do something with our bargaining groups. We have to. We can't hire. Okay? I can't tell you how many times I've been teaching math this year. not a good use of money. Super fun for me, by the way. Okay, but this is the conundrum. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do we slaughter programs to increase the salary schedule? I mean, that's a really good conversation to have. And I'm serious. I'm dead serious, because what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And then what programs do we slaughter to get the salary schedules competitive enough so that we don't struggle to hire teachers? So, $1 million question. This is part of our budget discussion. Do we stay status quo and just kind of absorb the positions that go into retirement and not hire back certain things so we can mitigate the 1.71 gap, right? 2.29 COLA increase, 4% expenditure increase. And the hard part is, when you look at our budget, we're 86% personnel. So when you talk about slaughtering or decimating program to put that all towards salary, that's people. That's people. So these are the conundrums that I truly lay awake at night saying, okay, now what? And then to add insult to injury, every year that I've been superintendent, and this is not a lie, every year that I've been superintendent, I've had Alt Ed and Redwood at my desk at the beginning of the year. What are you going to do about these portables, Becky? Becky, do you know that the roof is leaking over here? Becky, do you know that we have waters coming in at the wall? Hey, Becky, my foot just went through the ramp, and that is a true story.
Or through the floor of the classroom.
Or through the floor of the classroom. Hey, Becky, what are we going to do about this? So we have to decide how to do this, and the hard part is our public, God bless them, are super, super, super supportive, but no one wants to be taxed anymore.
Right.
I get it. I don't know how to do it. I really don't know how to do it. And I invite the public to come in and ask us a whole bunch of questions.
Well, you said it so frankly. 86% want an increase in wage, but we have 14% of the remaining of the budget to do everything else to run the school. That's difficult. How do we get that many programs out of 14%? That's actually pretty amazing.
Well, and the hard part is, if I could be the queen of all things, God help us all, but if I could, we're gouged, okay? We want to put a washer and dryer in the Diedrich Center so some of our kids and families can wash their clothes and they can come to school with clean clothes. We originally wanted to put it right in Alt Ed in a classroom. Wouldn't that make a whole lot of sense? Well, because it's public money, it has to be prevailing wage. We don't have a choice. So to put in a $2,000 washer and dryer was going to cost us a little over $10,000. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. So we said, okay, let's do it at the Diedrich Center. So now we're hoping we can put it at the Diedrich Center. I brought this to you last month, right? Mm-hmm. And it was going to be $3,700 because it's prevailing wage. So if I called in a local builder and said, hey, I need a building, 8 classrooms over there, and I want it to be, each classroom to be 1,200 square feet. I don't know, I'm throwing this out there. What a builder in our town could build it for is a third of what it's going to cost us, because we have to do prevailing wage. It's got to be Department of State Architects approved. We have to have an inspector on site. We have to have all these regulations. So rather than saying, okay, hey, we're going to build a building. Like if we could build a building and take a loan out on it, we could afford to build a building and take out a loan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But we can't, because in order to build the buildings that we need to replace all of those 30-year-old portables over there, it's going to cost us $10 million. We can't take a loan on $10 million, make that payment, because if we do, it's going to come out of the base. It's going to come out of our general fund.
14%.
So these are the hard parts. I know people are upset. I live in this community too. My husband and I fight about taxes on our date nights, and the hard part is that we really truly have to come together and decide what the priorities are, and they're tough conversations because everybody wants a piece of it. And there's this image out in the community that, I think I saw one Facebook post that said, we're all overpaid. Okay. You can look at all of our salary schedules. Not one of us, we're the second largest district in the county. There's not one salary schedule in Fort Bragg Unified's budget, not one salary schedule that's in the top 2, top 3, top 4, top 5, top 6, top 7 budgets in the county. Not one. So I know I sound like I'm preaching. I absolutely want to get input from our families. I absolutely want to get input from our kiddos and from our staff. We are going to have to, when we're looking at our budget, we are going to have to really come together and decide what those priorities are. And that is not going to be easy work. So,
Should we stop and offer public or board comment or questions?
Just a question, you earlier mentioned our representatives have no idea about the whole funding.
mhm.
I think that's something that we as a board can maybe help with. So another time we can maybe talk about this, but I'd
Like the
love
March
to
17th.
figure out how to get that message out personally to,
That's a good thing to do with the Legislative Action Day.
Yes.
March 17th.
Yep.
so is that March 17th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
And we could send in through CSBA, we can register and,
because I think if they don't know
Okay.
that, they need to know that.
I agree.
And I think we talked about that at our workshop, and I thought
Mhm.
there was some interest amongst us.
Are you
Yeah.
going,
Okay.
Mary?
I want to go, but I never heard more. We didn't decide. I mean, I'm not going to register without everybody's.
I think
Input
I
and
think we were
approval.
on board. I felt like we were on board that having 2 representatives there was
Mhm.
valuable.
Definitely. And to get good talking points together ahead of time, which I'm sure CSBA can help us
No,
with.
they have it all scripted for
Scripted,
you, so
yeah.
that's a little bit difficult, but at least you're also mingling with the right folks that you could check in with them later if it's too scripted.
Well, I can take a script and.
Alter it.
And edit it.
We'll find
So-
a
Then you
way.
won't be asked back, but
It's okay, at least I got my shot.
But just as we move forward, I think one of the things that really needs to be at the forefront is how do we prioritize? And if you say this is the priority, then we have to look at everything, but beneath, I don't know if beneath is the right word, but we have to look at everything else and see what can be readjusted to focus on those priorities. And that's the hard part as a board.
I'm going to turn it over if there's anybody from the audience that would like to speak, and then we'll come back to the. And please introduce yourself and talk to the mic so the people at home can hear you.
Gabriel Quinn Maroney. I'll just make a brief comment. Regarding the tax thing, I don't think it's going to be successful just because imagine if your school was taxed or, money was taken away. It's like you couldn't really cope with that. And there's so many people out there that they would pay a tax, but they can't. They can't afford it. They're like already, check to check, trying to make it. So, I think success looks like thinking out of the box. And I think it's really important that we're here and we're acknowledging this problem, and it's a big problem. And that's why I personally, although I never look to the president for solutions, but I like people like Tulsi Gabbard that say that, let's bring our people home and build infrastructure and put money back in schools, things like that. But this needs a local solution, and we need a political campaign. It needs to be well organized, and we really need a game plan. There are solutions, and I think that we need to come up with more money somewhere else. That's the solution. Cutting, obviously there's things that you have to do, right, if things fail. But I think what success looks like is finding a way, thinking outside the box, being proactive and doing the work that it takes to have more money that you know what to do with. Because this is really the foundation of our society that's kind of crumbling here. And I think we need to be way more proactive, come up with a solid game plan, and initiate that, and end game it, make sure it actually happens. When I looked at Measure B, and I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, I just looked at it like how much money it would be, and it just seemed like kind of a lot of money for your average person that owns a house. On top. That's the problem. It's like on top of this, on top of that. where already people might be paying $10,000 in property taxes a year. Just, you know, if you can't pay that, they take your house. And then it's another maybe $600 or whatever on top of that. So, you know, I generally would be for, you know, finding taxes, but at this time, it doesn't feel like that's going to be successful. And I don't think that's what success looks like.
We were talking about the budget, in our LCAP.
Yeah, but
So-
but the budget has to do with funding, right?
But the bond,
It's fine. Go ahead and make your comments, Gabe.
Okay. Well, I could be out of line, and that's what I'm saying, but still, regarding the budget, we need to come up with money somewhere, right?
Mhm.
So that's why I'm saying, well, that's why I'm saying this. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you.
any other comments from the audience at this time? Okay. Any questions, comments from the board or staff? Okay, so next steps then. So we have another meeting.
So we meet next week, is the regular board meeting
Right.
next week.
I was
and-
looking at specials, but yeah.
Okay, and I'm hoping by then, I will have some dates for you with LCAP development times. 5th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade, working with, having some staff time that we can have that doesn't conflict with meetings, and then looking at, meeting with parents at the times that were suggested, and having those opportunities available. And then having the other LCAP dates, the April date, and maybe combining some of those with the board chat to be like coffee with the principal or things of that nature, so we can do a couple things. So I'll have that for you next week.
And we're gonna do a flyer. we can
That,
have.
that we already do through DTS, through
Okay.
document tracking systems. They give us a brochure. I mean, that's made for us, the infographic.
Right, but an input
Yeah, sort of.
sheet.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a byproduct of it.
Mhm.
Mhm. I mean, there's enough that we can take a bunch to schools and be handing them out like that, or?
Well, they're on the website. I mean, it's
Mhm.
the budget overview for
Right,
parents. So,
right.
yeah, we can print that out. That's last year's. I mean, this year's won't be available for a while, but you can certainly take last year's and show them that. It's a nice little summary.
Right, yeah, no, the summary is good. It's much easier reading.
Yeah.
So those, I believe, are our next steps. And then as we go into the budget process and we get in March, second interim will be completed by,
Mhm.
March 15th?
March
Well,
15th.
whichever, I think it's the 12th is the meeting. Is that right? Yeah. I
Yes.
think the 12th is the meeting where that'll be approved, and we'll have much better information about the budget.
and at
Well,
that,
and and then we're supposed to have, is that still happening? The March 19th is supposed to be a second benchmark and budget discuss special.
so that's a special meeting to look at our benchmarks,
Mm-hmm.
the benchmark 2, and then if we should have more, a better budget idea from the state at that
Mhm.
point.
My question is it appropriate for us to have a short discussion about the direction that the board would like to go as far as,
Budget priorities?
well, I don't know if priorities, because I don't want to get the list and get everybody fired up, but more about, do we cut deeper than we say we want to try to deal with the salary? I mean, that discussion, I think, has to happen before, I mean, just that general idea. Do we really want to make our salary schedules competitive? If we do, and that's a priority for our 85% of our budget people, 86, excuse me, then I think that needs to be discussed before negotiations, before March, before we find out, because right now, just from the basic information, we don't have enough to pay the increase. So if we need to make or attract and retain quality staff, and that needs to be a priority, I feel like I don't want to keep dancing around it. I feel like we keep making it through, but
We need to dive
to
in.
really, I think to really make an impact and do that, I don't know, so because it's kind of early for, I mean, not in relative speaking, but for us to be here. And I want to make this meeting, yes, meaningful and purposeful, that we were all out for an evening. So while we're not looking at people, positions, and that, should we just kind of talk about, is that a priority for us? Or are we more in do we want to stay status quo and keep, the money seems to work out? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, because I feel like when it's emotional and we have to balance the budget for the county, and it
We
gets
get
a
too
little,
close
yes,
to that
we get
point.
too
Timing.
close to the people. But if we talk for a few minutes tonight about, is that a priority? We decided together as a group that the board reserve was a priority. We didn't want to be in a qualified budget, and we didn't want to have to keep worried about the third year out every time we discussed budget. We made that as a priority for us. We made the decision. We're slowly working there. But as a board and as a recommendation from staff, is that what we want to do for our people? Because, I just think we have to decide that, because if we don't, we keep shuffling
Dance
for,
around it.
yeah. And I don't know. I just kind of feel like if we're the furthest out, or the further out we are from it, the less emotional it is, the less, you're talking about the basket weaving or underwater basket weaving teacher, because there isn't one, so it's not a person right now, but we're talking about that position. Well, that's when the room gets full and people get a little hot. But if we're just talking about, do we want the salary schedule to be competitive, to recruit and retain, that conversation means, yes, we do. So that means the 14% plus the 2 point whatever the math was.
2.29.
Yeah. Well, I meant the difference between the 4 and the 2.29.
1.71.
Yeah, 1.71. So anyway, I don't know if I'm beating a dead horse, but
So I think, I don't have enough information. I appreciate your questions, but I question, do we have, one, a retention problem? I know we have a recruitment problem, but how does our recruitment problem compare to other districts in the area? Does everyone have the same recruitment problem? I know that, working at the city, they don't have a recruitment or retention problem. You have an open job, a lot of people are willing to take that job. Who gets a pension these days? Public education and public servants. No one else. So those jobs tend to go quickly. So I wonder, without really understanding whether recruitment is our problem or a problem would be really helpful. And also, I don't hear a lot about retention issues. I know people leave, but there's usually, at least from when I hear about it, I guess there's a reason. Maybe people do leave because salary's not good enough. But I haven't heard of many people like that. So not anything you have to answer now, but I think for me to give good input, it'd be good to understand, is education and recruitment difficult everywhere, or is it just a Fort Bragg issue?
Recruitment is an issue everywhere. Some areas have it more difficult than others. Recruitment for us is difficult for several reasons. We're remote. We're not just rural, we are remote. If you don't understand what it means to live on the coast and what that remote feeling means, people don't have a tendency to stay here very long. Do you have some kind of connection to the community so that you're here? Most people who stay and we retain, it's because they're Fort Bragg High grads. If you look at our staff, we have a lot of Fort Bragg High grads. Another is, are you connected to this community through a family member? My husband and I are here. I'm here. I'm a transplant, but I'm here because I'm connected to my husband, who is a Mendo High graduate, whose family's been here, and so that's my connection. And typically, what you'll find is people who are connected to the community in some way.
Right.
Those are the people who typically stay. We have a difficult time with recruitment because we have a housing shortage. It's difficult to find reasonable rent. The recruitment is tough because in the state of California, we don't have as many teachers as we've typically had in the past. We do have jobs that have 0 applications. That's not the case in Fort Bragg Unified. When we get desperate, I start making phone calls. And it's, hey, does anybody know anybody who would, fill this position well? And we go out and start having the conversation of, do you know what a pension means? We have the best insurance in town. $270 a month, a family of 8 can be fully insured. It's a deal. So
I guess that goes back to, if our salary schedule was 10% higher, would any of this change? I mean, are people going to live here? Because I agree with you, 100%. People are here, they connected here, they're from here. I don't think a 10% higher salary schedule is going to fix the problem.
But is it gonna show more value to your employees?
Well, of course,
Yeah.
but is that,
And the other side of it is you'll decimate all the programs, so then you'll have an educational system that they're gonna move because they wanna find a better school for their kids to go to.
and I'm not convinced that, and you guys would know better than me, but I don't get the sense, I haven't gotten an email or phone call about anyone who doesn't feel appreciated working for the district. I mean, we all want more money, we all want higher pay.
We're all worth $1 million.
And so we have a step schedule for a reason, right? You're here longer, you have different degrees, you get more money. So I'd also like to know, I wrote it down, how many employees next year are gonna get an increase because they're going to a higher step? So when people talk about COLA, I'm not getting any raises, that's really not true.
COLA
They are
is a
getting
raise.
raises.
every classified personnel will be getting an increase next year because we have a 5-year agreement that we've made with them.
Okay, so there isn't people aren't at a top step.
Every classified
they-
employee
okay.
will have a raise next year.
Okay,
Plus their step?
No,
No. just-
every classified
Okay.
employee will have a
The-
raise next
yeah,
year,
okay.
yes.
plus any steps that are coming.
No,
The classified aren't stepping until next year.
Okay,
The final year of the agreement includes an increase on all of the cells, plus they get a step. The certificated staff will all get a step.
except for the ones who are at the
who are
top
top of their,
and don't move anymore. That's,
we don't have
20
a whole lot of them.
right, I guess
No.
I'd be curious to know how many people are at the top.
Well, everyone, like you said, you want to retain your employees and make them feel appreciated. And of course, everyone, who wouldn't want to give everyone a raise because everyone's working really hard. But what does that mean in dollars? 1%, 2%, 3%. What does that mean, for the 86%? I mean, to know really what kind of revamping do we need to do? Right, so if you give me, just so that you can get the numbers, because I'm more concrete that way. I mean, we could talk about emotions and what I like and what I don't like about programs or, that we need or don't need, but when it boils down to it, what does that equate to? To know how much revamping or thinking outside the box do we need to do to make this work? And then the creativity of, which is a whole other expertise. Some districts move up very quickly in their step and column, and some, take a long time. So I don't know where we're at in the scheme of other districts. If, like you said, it's invaluable to think. I think people forget the value of having a pension to look towards. There's many corporations that they've been working for 30 years. The company goes bankrupt, and you're left with nothing. This system's pretty good that you're probably going to be guaranteed. I mean, I see a lot of retired teachers very happy with their, all the things that they have, and then to have a medical that's never been shifted to them. I mean, I've worked for many private companies where you're getting medical and it's great, and all of a sudden the next year they keep cutting it down and increasing your monthly premium. So there's lots of things that's very valuable that hasn't been, rattled, that we have to, keep that in mind, that we haven't pushed the extra increased cost on any staff.
Yeah, and I'd want to find out from the unions, the staff, okay, you want raises, well, pay more of your medical, or pay more of your pension. But it's, what are their priorities? Do they want more pension? Do they want to, live on?
Mandated.
So
Yeah,
here's a
pension's
couple,
not-
the pension's off the table. That's
Yeah.
a state
regulated.
It's a state-regulated pension, which means unless there is an additional benefit, that any increases to the pension cannot be placed on the employee. So because there's no increase in benefit to the employee, then all the increases on PERS and STIRS are employer-driven.
Well,
That's,
okay, not all of PERS, but the classic, well, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
There are some groups in PERS that employees can pay more.
not us,
Yeah.
Yeah, we're-
not us. So,
Well, you can buy service time.
you can buy service time, but that's
It's very
That-
expensive.
that's
but-
open to everybody.
Right.
I don't know
But
if
that's not-
certificated can anymore.
Yes.
Are you sure?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. I should have done that.
So,
So yeah, for me, I'd have to really know what that is monetary to know, like, am I committed to that? Am I committed to say, we're gonna reduce X amount in, you know, in our general fund spending so that we can create a better pay scale for everyone? I don't know if I can commit
Well,
to
I
something
was
I don't know.
I wasn't saying that we were gonna
Yeah.
make, we're gonna offer everybody 10%. Mine was so that I don't want the staff to be working on all these number crunching if that's not our priority. Our priority is to provide more extra for students. If that's our collective thing, then we don't need to worry about how we're cutting to add to the salaries. That's what I was meaning, is that, not that we're making any decisions based on numbers or anything, but just where do we guide the staff as far as what we're willing to support and what we're willing to approve in a budget? That's where I was going with my question.
In just a year or two, we had that big ugly list up on the screen of all the things that, all the easy stuff was gone. And as soon as that list is back up there again, it's gonna go.
well, and then
Right,
we
and
have
I
some
agree.
other hard things that we have to talk about. You know, we have to hire an additional special education teacher next year. And if we're lucky, we can get away with hiring one additional special education teacher, but we have to increase our special education staff. Our caseloads have increased, and we have to address it. That's inevitable. So there's your 86% that's growing. We have over 2,000 Chromebooks in this district. We have a whole lot of tech, and our tech guys are drowning. And we need to really talk about reinstating the position that was vacated. We've never hired for that position back. We're kind of at a point where we need to do that. So when we start talking about priorities, there are things that are going to happen, or parts of the system are going to implode. So that's the other difficult part of this. You know, we have some costs that are coming out of that don't exist this year. Okay. So we are going to have to increase staff in special education. We're going to have to fund some positions out of necessity. We have to look at our tech situation. Okay, Ari is our IT director, and he's going to be giving a report in March or April. They do a lot, but 2 techs for thousands of devices, not to mention that's also our phones and our projectors and our printers and our camera system,
Our security.
our security. I mean, it's
amazing.
clocks, bells. That's a lot for 2 people. Because in truth, in the perfect world, our director would be doing director things. But right now he's crawling around, pulling wire and.
So let me go back. So we have positions that are open, we get no applications for. Again, is that a money issue, or is that a Fort Bragg issue? Because where we are.
The pay.
It might
issue.
be both, to
Pay.
be quite honest with you. It might be both.
Okay.
And also, we have some tough jobs that aren't super attractive.
Yeah.
You know, that's tough. So that's the hard part. We have a couple aid positions. They're tough positions.
And they don't pay.
Well, they're instructional aid positions, so
They're
They-
going up.
they're going up. I believe they're now starting right around $13.75 or $14. It's a tough job. It really
Yeah, and I
is.
think for what they're required to do, there are jobs in this community that start out much higher than that, and
Well, it's just
Oh,
like a
I get it.
paramedic.
And
Paramedic.
for the next 6 months,
they pay-
anyone can go out
you
there
can
and get
go
18 bucks an
hire 'em.
hour
You can-
counting people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so.
That's
Short-term.
my
I got that
concern,
phone call, yeah.
is that, yes, I mean, all the things that you're saying are true, Scott, but it's not helping our cause because, you know, I just,
No, it goes back to what comes first, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg. And then, adding insult to injury, we're trying to fix the plane while it's flying. So that's what's so tough and frustrating about this. We have very well-intentioned groups. We have everybody who's looking out for themselves. And you as a board are going to have to sift through this and let us know where your priorities are. Now, I can get the powers that be together and we can start prioritizing what we have at our sites and in our schools. But what you're going to see, to be quite honest with you, is that all the extra stuff that we have is in supplemental and concentration.
Right.
So that's not stuff
It's not
that,
to
that
go
we
away.
can say we're gonna get rid of and put towards raises,
Mm.
okay? We've done a really good job of moving the majority of the extra good stuff and making it for our supplemental and concentration, like our counselors.
Mm-hmm.
We've never had 6 counselors in this district.
Which is supporting everyone.
Truly,
Supporting everyone.
truly.
Students and staff.
Yeah.
So
It's huge.
it's things like that. And so if we start looking at things that we're going to remove, they're things that will impact the entire plant. So if you say, well, what about the custodians? What about the secretaries? What about the librarians? What about the cooks? What about the, right? So, I mean, we could talk about it in ADCO about prioritizing what we have at our sites, but I think what you're going to find is that a lot of the extra stuff that we have is all supplemental concentration, and that's not up for grabs. So, but I really do appreciate what you're saying, Kathy, because if the goal is that this one's to be the priority, then we're going to have to get creative to do it. Like, do we go to the parents and the bargaining units and say, okay, let's look at class size? I mean, talk about the dirty little secret, right? Let's look at class size. Is that something we want to say, okay, let's increase it, and what does that do?
and that is something that's very special to Fort Bragg. If you talk to other districts, this is for you, Scott. If you talk to other districts in our state or any across our state, our class sizes are extremely small at all. I mean, not
Sites.
saying it's great. I have children here,
Right.
but that is definitely,
It's fantastic.
Unusual.
It's
Unusual,
fantastic. So, so if you want to get creative and you want to say, okay, then you give me the marching orders and say, Becky, go and talk about this in negotiations. The hard part is, we already sunshined what we want to talk about. So is that then a priority for next year? So
well, it
that,
doesn't sound like we as a group are ready to do that. So,
But
I
it's a-
would
it's a great
suggest,
question.
Can we, I know we don't like doing weekends, but I think this would warrant a budget workshop, a Saturday or Sunday or something where we can sit down and really dig into it and get more information. I don't feel like we have enough information. Find out what other districts are paying, find out what's happening, and just hammer it out. I don't know if everybody has time to do that. I was thinking after you do the March budget.
is there anybody at the county? I know we ask for people from the county to help with your guys' jobs and the teachers' jobs, but is there anybody that could, and I don't really want to pay, no offense, but CSBA, because I'm sure it costs a fortune, but anybody through ASCA or anything that could come and, I don't know, and share those things, like somebody that
we
travels
can
in
ask
a.
the county for that. The
in a-
county made a couple of things like that for us already. So we can ask for a comparison
And
countywide.
I mean, maybe even just if there's kind of a forum or somewhere, a resource with just ideas, like I know there's all kinds of ideas for fundraisers for PTO
Right.
groups, but I mean, like really what super great ways to do things differently. I don't know.
They don't
If there's
cost any
any-
money. So we can
Well, or
save
just
money.
doing things more efficiently.
Right.
So if we could run, like, all the stuff that's happened with the food service, I mean, that was a part, an area that we looked at, that you looked at. And, it's made amazing leaps and bounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, are there other, and the after-school program has changed, and, you know, all those things. Is there, you know, where are some other places we could look to be more efficient so that it frees up
Funds.
something? If we do enough of that, maybe we'll have, you know,
Well,
what we
and
need.
someone had asked me once before about, you know, like our webpage, and I said, well, our webpage
It's free.
is free. We no longer devote $6,000 a year, and over the course of 5 years, it's $30,000. That's a position. You know, whether it's an instructional aid position or whomever, but it's a position. And so we can look at that and see if we have any low-hanging fruit, for lack of a better word, or looking at what is taking ongoing general fund dollars and, you know, what can we shore up? Because that was some of the things that we had done. We said, okay, our our after-school program had $140,000 general fund encroachment. Okay, we're hoping this year that we are down to zero.
Oh, that's
Okay.
amazing.
That's huge. So that was the low-hanging fruit that we took care of. Nutrition services still has an encroachment on the general fund, but it used to be $250,000 or $280,000. This year, we're hoping that
It's below 200.
it's below 200. But that's something that we can still chip away at. You know, what other things can we chip away at? So,
So then that extra money is really just lowering our deficit spending third year out. So that's the part that people have a hard time conceiving, because like you just said, we had $140,000 extra. Where did it go? You know, and that's
and
what
we
it is.
gave increases.
Exactly, and things go up 4%, and then the deficit spending on the second and third year out is less, you know. So it's a complicated formula, the budget, because, you know, we're saying 15%, what was it? Of the entire budget is supplemental concentration, but we have 86% in personnel, but then there's 14%. I mean, it's just the whole formula is so wild. So it's really hard to.
Wrap your head around.
But it's, yeah.
And Mary, to your comment, I think our training tells us the more conversations we can have, quality conversations we can have, helps us in the long run. So I support that. March may be a little wild, but Sundays are good.
Right.
You know, I support it as well, as long as there's time for you to get some good data together, for us to have a really meaningful.
I would love to have a really
Conversation.
meaningful conversation. I think the hard part for me is that in order to have a meaningful conversation, you're going to have to look at positions.
It's fine.
You're going to have to look at staffing. I mean, I'm being very honest with you. You can't have a $22 million budget. 86% of that budget is staffing. 14, we're running the whole district
And 14%.
on 14%. That's pretty darn good.
That's amazing. I mean, like, kudos to you guys.
Right, but I think, again, just having some of the data, like what other, you know, again, how much of a recruitment problem other places have, like, just kind of where we sit. Like, it was classroom size, that's great information. You guys want raises, we love the small classrooms, can't really have both. So where do we meet there? So,
We can, but then we have to give up something else.
right, we can't have it all.
I mean, that would be a quicker, faster way to give raises.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
You know, and in the meantime, we can go to Sacramento and knock on doors and
That's
get better funding.
You've had this dialogue
Fix the
with
system.
McGuire's office, right, before?
Yeah.
I'm
Becky?
sorry, I've had this dialogue with what?
About school funding,
With whom?
McGuire.
McGuire's office?
Oh, yeah. But, you know, we just need to keep doing it. It's been a while. It's been probably 2-3 years since I've
But I
spoken to
mean,
him.
were they totally ignorant to this?
I remember being on the phone with him for a scheduled conference call, and he was incredibly supportive. I wasn't able to see his face, so I don't know if
He
it was
w-
shock and awe.
I don't think that was McGuire. Who came the day you and I don't know who else was there, for the tour at Dana Gray, the after
Oh,
school?
Congressman Huffman, he's federal.
Huffman.
Yeah,
He's
Okay.
federal,
yeah.
so,
Was the after school
yeah,
program.
so that's a little bit different. He doesn't have a direct impact on us like Senator McGuire does.
I couldn't remember who it was, but yes, now you say that.
So I'm happy to look at Wendy and say, Wendy, we need to get this information. But everybody just needs to be really prepared for what that means, because we have really eliminated a lot of the low-hanging fruit. You know, Laura Vieira asked me today, hey, is there any way we can get the librarians back, because Brick and I are still sharing one? I mean, it's those
Same
types.
with art.
Pardon?
Same with art. If
I
it wasn't
know.
for Flockworks, we wouldn't
I
have
know.
anything, really.
No, and I'm gonna disagree with that, because there's lots of art hung in Redwood, there's art hung at Dana Gray, and yes, Blockworks is doing it, but Alt Ed has a whole lot.
Middle school
of
has a
art.
lot.
Middle school has a designated art teacher, but
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying that all of our elementary teachers have gone through the teacher program, and the visual performing arts, they all take a class on it. I did.
You have to take a test on it.
Well, when I went to school, many decades ago, we had art in the classroom. We didn't have a special pull-out art class.
So,
But that will be a community argument. I agree.
and the hard part is, I'll be honest with you, that's gonna be a tough argument, because our reading and math scores, with all those years with art and music, don't show anything special. And that's that's another dirty little secret. And I'm not saying that our teachers don't work hard. Our teachers work really hard. But this is why we're looking at our system as a whole,
Right.
to try and figure out what parts of our system are broken. Because we have to improve our reading scores. We
Right.
have to improve our English language art scores. And I'm not just talking the CASP. I'm talking about our internal scores as well, our oral reading record scores, our oral fluency record scores, our internal benchmarks. Those things have to improve. And I know that there's always an argument with music and art, and I agree with it. The hard part is, we've had those positions in the district for years and saw nothing that showed that was the reason that our scores haven't been good. So and I don't mean that in a bad way, because I know our teachers work hard.
Right. And
Which is why I'm saying we are so focused on our system. We are so focused on shoring up that core instruction, because we know they're working hard. And so if we can work at it in a more efficient and better way, what are the big holes that we're missing? And it's a hard situation to be in, to take that deep dive. It's not
Right.
easy. It's
Well,
not
and I don't think
easy.
anyone's blaming any, staff or our program. It's the students are different, families are different now, and so we have to kind of, that's kind of, fascinating about the MTSS, is that it's providing the full, what the needs could be, the pockets that are lacking in the brain of a student, because that's changing. The staff is strong and showing up every day and doing their job, but families and students are different than they were, and you have 5 days to prep them, the staff, which is, it's kind of crazy to get them ready for the school year, and then you're, like you said, you're on your 180-day flight.
I
We
think
just
it's
passed
really
100.
Interesting to
That's
watch
right.
that you could go to high school here, go to work at the mill, own a home, one parent could work. I mean, look at what you have to do now. I mean, both parents work at
And
least
they're
one
still
job.
not making it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the worker is fallen behind wage-wise compared to all other costs.
And for most, there's nothing at retirement.
That's right.
I would encourage our union folks to, if we have this workshop, whenever we have this workshop, it'd be great if they were there.
Yeah.
It'd be great if they could hear what you have to divulge at the table.
And give us some input,
Yeah,
even better,
I'd love,
in a non-binding conversation.
yeah, exactly. I think that'd be really helpful. And if they don't come, then that sends another message to me.
Okay. Any other budget or LCAP last minute?
Do you want Anna to poll you for a workshop date, and do you want that to be after April 15th?
Well, I don't know if we can really wait till after April. I don't know where
Where does that leave us in terms of
Yeah.
budget?
Well, we have a special meeting
but I also
in
don't want to
March.
jam it up so that Wendy doesn't have information that's, or to back her up to, she just gets the information and she has to have it to a Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, well, at that point, it's gonna be so burned into my brain that it won't matter. So, anytime after that second interim report is fine for me.
It's after March.
So
15th.
sure, let's have Anna check with the two of you.
So between March 15th and April 15th?
This month is, I mean,
Crazy.
yeah, this month is worse for,
February?
yeah. The quantity is high this time of year. The quality and complication is the other part of the year. But if it works into my calendar, you know, and I'm not working, you know, but I'm only one. There's 5 of us, plus you 3.
Well, it'd be important that we were all there, so
Yeah.
it works for
But,
you too.
yeah,
Would it be better for you to do a special
Do you-
during the week or on a Saturday?
for me, it's definitely, I mean, we're open till 6, so,
You
I
said
would say
Sunday's
Saturday
better.
probably works better for me.
yeah,
too.
and I work most Saturdays in March, I think. But, anyway,
Sunday's
just put
good.
it out and we'll see what,
You look at your meetings.
okay. If there's no further, I appreciate you staying, Mr. Kale. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, and
I second.
okay.